Okay, cool. So start with the Giddy Pessimist. So,
And just whatever. We don't have to start with that at all. Like you had a
okay.
pretty good dude.
Yeah.
You do your, like I think you had a great idea. That was just kind of, the
The
hey,
main
I've
things you want
put
to
some
touch on.
yeah,
Yeah,
I wasn't even sure what was on there, so.
I would say then let's just start with how your day's going, man. Like how's it going and where are you at with things? Like,
Oh boy. Okay. Well, I've actually been thinking about this, and maybe it might not be the answer you're totally ready for, but I've been thinking about this already.
That's
I'm
fine.
doing, yeah, I guess this is the Giddy Pessimist. I am doing simultaneously freaking amazing and stressed beyond belief. Just with about to finish up my master's degree, and just had a big project in there that put all my business on hold. But I got that funding video out. But as far as just the whole money situation and just where we're at, like things are incredible, but trying to start your own business is definitely
Can
not for
be.
the faint of heart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Or
don't know.
people who aren't willing to take risk maybe as well. Like there's always going to be some risk involved, and a lot of people just can't live that side of it,
Yeah, and with that though too, because like
I
no,
wouldn't
it's
say can't, but it's harder.
for sure. And the thing, I was thinking about this before because after, for such a long time calling myself a recovering entrepreneur, like I know damn well what I signed up for, and everything, all this anxiety seems to be right on, right on
track.
course.
That's
And
good then.
yeah, and the other thing too is like
Everything's a disaster, just like I planned.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a beautiful chaos. But the other alternative, which I've tried to do, is working for somebody else, and that is 10 times more miserable. So
fewer disasters, but way more miserable.
yeah, for sure, and not to just be a total Debbie Downer, but that's kind of been. There's a lot that goes into entrepreneurship, and there's a lot of sacrifice that I think kind of goes unseen on a lot of things. A lot
Of course.
lonely nights, a lot of questioning.
There's that iceberg. There's that whole,
Yeah.
I mean, there's Freud's example of the iceberg. Some people debate whether that was worth creating an analogy for, but there's definitely, we've probably all seen that animation of like those at the 1% top, they're standing on this iceberg in the middle of the ocean. Everyone else is on shore. Like, how'd you get out there? And they don't see the giant fucking iceberg of work underneath them that like I took all this time to build this type of thing. So it's like, this is cool. The reason I think, just to illustrate it a little bit, we're sitting down today, I think is because, our attempt to sort of illustrate some of that iceberg being built underneath.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
that's what I get this as. Like you've cited Hermosi a lot. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about him and reference him over the course of time. But, he says all the time, like, I really like his tagline almost at this point is like, I always wish Musk and Buffett documented their process, so I'm going to do the same. But even he always says, like, I wish I would have started sooner because there's so much he missed out on. And so here you are, pretty much at the beginning. We could say maybe not the very beginning, but you've got content that goes back to almost the beginning, I would say. And so right now you're in a very unique position compared to, I think, a lot of other of these people who have quote unquote made it or have built these crazy businesses or found very interesting ways to create a huge pond, to cite an analogy we've used before, to siphon off a little pond out of this whole stream that is money. You found a way to make a lot of money in a very unique way. And you're at the point where you're early enough and have the insight enough to start documenting it now, which I don't think very many people, if anyone, has ever done. Gary Vee, like none of those people even. Like you have the benefit of standing on all of their shoulders and leapfrogging off of their knowledge. So anyways, to shut up for a minute, because I'm sure you have a million thoughts on everything and I'm putting a bunch of words in your mouth. What of the things that I've said do you resonate with? And what is your kind of plan? Where are you at right now? What have you done? And what is your plan?
Yeah, cool. This is exciting to
Past,
finally.
present, past, and future.
Yeah.
Just give it all to me. 5 minutes.
5 minutes,
on the
yeah,
clock.
easy.
No tangents this time. We're gonna stick to it.
The one thing I would push back a little bit on is you said I've found a way to make a lot of money. Hopefully, in
Right.
theory,
In principle.
in theory, there's a
But-
plan in place.
But
that
I would argue that anybody who's determined at something is bound to have something at the end of the rainbow, like, with enough like intelligence and hard work, the worst thing that can happen is you can fail, but you're automatically in a position where you're going to learn from that and immediately move on and go to the next thing. Like, that's the thing. You're on the path to success. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just I have a slightly deeper intuition than other people. Maybe I'm more optimistic, and we can talk about the pessimistic thing, but I just really think it's like, it's only a matter of time, with the qualities that you have, or anyone in your position might have, like, work ethic and intelligence. You're going to make it,
Well, I very much appreciate that. And I'm so stoked also. I've said this so much in the last few weeks of just how much I appreciate your help in making this even remotely possible with all of this. There's no way I could get this out without your help. So again and again, dude, I cannot express how much I appreciate that. Kind of on that though, to answer your original question, and you said something I thought was interesting. What you were talking about, if people keep doing these things I'm doing, they should be successful. Mm-hmm. And this whole thing, I guess, to start off, is my attempt to implement what I think are called these sciences to success. And that is just all of these things that I've gathered through a lot of my readings on just business and self-improvement and different business degrees and whatnot that just kept popping up over and over. And I finally got to the point one day where I was reading another book, and I don't even remember what it was, but just skimming through the chapters, and I was like, I've read all of these before. Like, I know what all of these are. I've already read them.
Isn't that interesting when you see like an idea you saw somewhere pop up in some other field or some other text, or you're like, oh, like, I'm familiar with that. I resonate with that. And then you can draw parallels.
Yeah.
Is that what you're getting at?
And it wasn't even that I resonate with that. It was literally like I was reading this book again where I was like, I know everything that would probably be in these chapters because I've read so many other books. And not only that, there's probably about 3 or 4 chapters that should be added in here from the other books.
That's another level. Like, when you know it's missing from the textbook or what shouldn't have been in the textbook.
And
not even textbook, but yeah.
Yeah. And it was just kind of at that point where I realized, I was like, okay, knowledge, not realized, but I think had that understanding that knowledge without action is worthless. And so it was like, okay, there's no point in knowing all of these things if I'm not actually implementing them. So my attempt was like, okay, all of these business principles and sciences to success, like, I want to just kind of distill them down and try to implement them. Yeah. Go from a know-it-all, because those are worthless, to a do-it-all, which, who knows, those might just be as worthless or more annoying. But it's a change. It's an evolution.
You might as well.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, we got to do something with our lives.
And so, we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but I figured, like, the purpose of this conversation today would be kind of in the line of, like, this is your first chance, to just be clear, I guess we'll say, or direct even.
Yeah.
To use a phrase we also talked about earlier, like, be direct with what you're, kind of where you're at right now, because maybe it's not the very beginning, but it's certainly closer to the beginning than the end.
Yeah.
So where are you at right now, and what have you kind of done up to this point?
Okay, so for the last 2 years, I have been building what I discovered later was a tech company in the insurance industry, which I've had a little bit of experience in the insurance industry quite a few years prior. Miserable experience.
Glad you said that first, so people don't immediately think of you as a shiesty.
Miserable. Yeah. And I have some videos on this. Just one of the worst experiences of my life. But it also introduced me to commissions, which is very difficult to forget, especially when you have a little bit of success in that. Fast forward to COVID, and my life had kind of... It didn't matter really where I was at. COVID changed a lot of things, and so I needed to kind of start applying these business principles. I'd realized once COVID hit, I think that was my second big economic recession. And these ideas that I had been thinking about with these sciences to success and these other business principles that I have been kind of gleaning throughout my life, I was like, okay, I think these principles might actually be right. And I think it's time to try to implement these things.
Because you've seen certain systems fail when they failed to adhere to these principles, kind of thing. Like you saw real world examples of these principles.
Essentially, what it was, to boil it down, was I really believed, once I saw COVID happen and I saw so many people lose their income and then their health care and then their homes and just everything depending on their jobs, I really believe that it's safer for people to control their own money, control their own income, and work for themselves. But also, having done that, kind of the traditional entrepreneurial way, I think there's fundamentally something very different. Like now with the internet, I think there's fundamentally a new entrepreneurial business model. So that's what a big part of this is me trying to really implement these principles and kind of provide a better opportunity for people to control their own finances in life.
Yeah, because that idea of like, don't be dependent on the banks, the institution, the government, those ideas have been around for a while, but your realization that COVID potentially brought is like, it's kind of like, it's sort of a hybrid almost, it sounds like. It's like you have financial independence. There's more opportunity, I guess we'll say, not to, again, put words in your mouth because I want to hear what the actual, these principles are, but it's a little bit more holistic in the sense that it's like people should we have the tools that anyone should be able to just fucking do to work for themselves and not be beholden to an employer if they don't want to, because look at how risky that can be, or look at how volatile that can be. And you had some of these kind of concepts you could sort of see coming out of the sciences of success you're talking about, like these, I don't know if the sciences of success were like the guiding principles for you, or if they were more just like,
I actually have there's a few of these. As I was going and working, I've always been an entrepreneur. It's more of it's not a decision. It's just kind of how you are. But just like looking through and how so many of the jobs that I've had just seemed, it was like this.
It didn't sit well with you?
It didn't, not just didn't sit well. It's like, why are we doing it this way? Like there are better ways of doing this. I was, just to kind of put things into perspective, I just turned 34. So I was of the generation where I literally started high school where you didn't need a computer and ended it where you had to turn everything in on a computer, like you had to type everything out. Yeah. So I was of that kind of generation. And so as I'm going through and like learning about this and realizing, man, there's so many ways that business could fundamentally be done differently. And just, I never understood like why we have to require people to show up to a job at a certain period of time when like nobody else depends on them or their work even being done on a certain time. And there's just so many demographics now that are underserved because of just the way that the business, like specifically, I don't know why they kind of come to mind all the time, but mothers. I think mothers are some of the most underserved demographics out there as far as jobs, and they're probably some of the most responsible, some of the most deserving, some of the most competent. But just the way that we've done it is, you have to work these certain hours in between when usually your family has to be at school and all your other appointments.
Yeah, right.
And so just kind of looking at these and finally seeing all of these things pile up and then come crumbling down, I was like, we've got to figure out something different. And like I had all these ideas, but at the same time, I hadn't been trying to apply them.
Right.
So I came back. I basically, try to get back to your question, I was sitting there and I was like, okay, I have all of these business ideas and principles and sciences to success. So like I used those to try to basically reverse engineer what I think the best opportunities would be. I ended up getting back into insurance just because, well, it was, how do I build a business with no overhead? How do I build a business with no employees? And then it was like, how do you make the most money? Sales. All right. What's the most money you can make in sales? Digital products. Or no, what type of sales could I have that has no inventory and no shipping? Digital products. Okay. What are high ticket digital products? And what are certain things you need differentiation for to sell? So I got back to insurance because I knew a little bit about that.
And there,
So with
It's full
that,
circle.
yeah, so I was just trying to build this for myself because I was like, okay, I got to a place. I'm not necessarily motivated by money, but once seeing all of this come crashing down, I was like, I'm not motivated by money, but I'm definitely motivated by the freedom that comes with money.
Um,
So that kind of shifted my mindset. So that's why I kind of was like, how do I make the most amount of money?
It's crazy to think that like there's a certain kind of freedom in this country, this free country, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, all this stuff. But there's a certain kind of freedom that only money can bring you.
Yeah.
Like you can't have just by living in this country. Like there's a certain kind of freedom of your time that money, like
Yeah.
that's a trip to think about that. But maybe you could make your argument. We just have a better opportunity to pursue that kind of thing here. But
It's I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily either or. It
Yeah,
is
that's true, too.
it's a sad reality that we are very dependent on money, and if you don't have it in this country, in a lot of countries, not just this one,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I mean the science just shows not only are you not going to live longer, you're not going to be nearly as happy. And I just feel like from where I'm at and having studied economics and finance and business, like I can very much point to the evidence of like, as far as, living expenses and wages, like there's this giant separation that's undeniable and it's gotten to the breaking point.
Yeah.
And so kind of with that whole thing, I was like, all right, we've got to figure out a better way of doing this.
Yeah.
And not even figuring it out. There's a lot of people that have figured this out.
Yeah,
But, so it's like, okay, what are these influencers or what are these other people that are like, have taken advantage of these new these internet opportunities?
Yeah.
Kind of trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
So where I was at with this, so I got into the insurance thing, trying to just figure this out. And I knew that COVID was allowing this to go more remote so that you didn't have to, it was very inefficient. People were driving from homes to homes. I was like, this is ridiculous. And I
God's
realized, yeah,
People are using Zoom. Like,
Yeah.
look at Zoom stock prices.
Yeah.
They just went through the ceiling. Like,
absolutely.
why aren't we doing this?
Yeah, I talked with another health insurance agent who said his agency, they never book an appointment. They never spend any time calling agents, which is about never calling leads. They have a text message service, which eliminates, like calling leads is about 80% of the business. So I heard a little bit about what he was doing, but it wasn't life insurance. So I created my own kind of system where with a CRM that I was able to program out. I'm able to send them the educational content that I've been created, videos, blogs, basically doing the whole educational aspect of life insurance and allowing them to book appointments through that text message. So basically automating 80% of the life insurance process. And then also with that, creating content around this, organic content.
Yeah.
This, what we're doing right now,
Yeah.
trying to do more of this to tell the story, but also create paid ads so that these can generate leads
Right.
for this exact CRM.
Yeah.
And so,
that are then they themselves valuable
yeah,
just by
and
being generated. Yeah.
yeah, and this was not the plan. Like this was not the
Okay.
plan to start with. The
Well,
plan,
Well,
the plan was simply, I was like, okay, I knew I had to work for myself again. I ended up selling a business and then doing my mini retirement / quarter life crisis for a year and a half, and then settling
everyone's
down.
got to go through it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everybody, you gotta go through
Yeah.
those times. And there, I ended up with a job managing a warehouse in Las Vegas. Then COVID came like 3 months into that. And I told myself when I was like 20 years old, I was never applying for another job. So of course, I'm like, all right, going through this quarter life crisis, breakdown, finally get a job, which I was like, this is great.
What was I thinking?
Yeah. And then seriously, COVID, I say, saved me from that. But that's because I just very quickly, that just went to hell and everybody just it just was a miserable situation.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, I'm never doing that again. Then
For realsies this time.
For reals this time. And then I actually started, I had the first business that sold was a fabrication and machine shop, so I was going to start doing that again. Then wildfires came and decimated the town I was in, and I thought I lost everything. I didn't know if we had stuff for 2 weeks. We were evacuated. So that's when I was like, okay, reevaluation again.
Yeah.
So I was just doing this to basically like, hey, I want this in my back pocket. I want something that I can do remotely. I want something that has unlimited potential. But then when I realized, I did a ton of research on the CRMs, and I found one that was honestly way more robust than I probably should have gotten into. Thankfully, I was super naive and dove into that. And after thousands of dollars in consulting fees, I've gotten it to a place where it's programmed, where this automation is functioning and has proven itself. And without even knowing this, the program that I've chosen has a software as a service mode. So you can pay a bit more. And once I've programmed this, I can license my system out.
Itself.
Yeah. Which
That's a whole other part of it.
that was the other really kind of fun, crazy thing, how it ended up. I was like, wow, this software as a service falls right in line with these other business principles of why I got to insurance. I was like, digital product, high tickets, very repetitive. So I was like, wow, this is a great opportunity. And while I also step back a little bit, when I first came back to life insurance, the first experience I had, they provided leads. The place that I was working through now, they didn't. So I realized very quickly that some of the top producers in the industry, to be successful, were spending $1,000 to $2,000 a week on leads.
So how does one get leads? So how does one?
Yeah, that's a great. That's
that's
whole.
where your mind goes. I see.
Yeah, how do you get leads? And it's actually probably the biggest issue. Well, other than just not much support or training, it's really difficult to find leads in this industry. And most of them are reused. Most of them just, you don't know what quality they are.
Which is crazy to think that there's fresh people out there, names, like there's tons of leads out there, like potential leads, we'll call them out there.
Yeah.
Just waiting to be harvested kind of thing. But it's hard to know how to do that. But with these tools of the internet, what you're getting at is in the modern age of ads and Facebook and all this stuff, like
it was like everybody was complaining about leads in this industry, and they're like, they're crappy quality leads, and I was sitting there and I was like, okay, well, everybody has crappy quality leads. It can't be that difficult to come up with crappy quality leads. And everybody's still successful on these things. So I was like, okay, it probably isn't that difficult to come up with good quality leads either. Somebody is figuring it out. So I was like, all right. And I honestly probably spread myself too thin and tried to take on too much at the beginning. With basically a new sales process that's not really defined for over the phone, programming a very robust CRM, and then generating my own leads.
Could be,
It was probably could have taken them a little step by step. But finally, so getting back to the original, where the heck are we at? Those three things are essentially all in place now. I've got the CRM programmed. I have got the ads proven, and I've got a few campaigns to test. And then, what was the other thing? CRM sales process. Leads. Yeah. So anyway, gosh, I don't even remember. Anyway, where I'm at now, I've got
the insurance scripts. You've got the templates.
I've got the scripts. I've got the templates. I've got it's hard to even go through
pretty much
everything. I've got everything
point,
figured out.
Yeah, it sounds like the way we were talking about it. The last time I think was like, all you have to really do now is flick the machine on. You kind of just need bodies to cover these different aspects of it before it falls. And sorry. So at this very specific second, I'm trying to find funding and build a team because they have to happen kind of in conjunction.
Yes. And that's kind of where we're at. And throughout this entire process, what I've been trying to do, I've been recording content as kind of whenever I can remember, because specifically, like you mentioned it before, the Hermosi, he was the one I think that might have specifically said it. Although that's not true. I've been documenting this actually a lot longer than Hermosi.
Knew about him.
Yeah, and actually, so I've only been documenting this business for 2 years. But if you look at my other channel, for the Giddy Pessimist,
2 years is still a long time.
It's a long time. But if you go way before this, my very first video was me in Hawaii after this was at the beginning of my mini retirement quarter life crisis, and I'm sitting there with my camera, this camera I had just bought over here, and my computer, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna figure out a way to make money with this computer and this camera. And man, I've tried so many different things. Fulfillment by Amazon. I mean, I can't even go through all of these like things that I've tried. And now I'm finally at the point. So it's like, then I found this insurance and I was like, this is the one I'm committing to. Like,
so that's a good piece of this iceberg is like, this is not the first first attempt at something.
Oh
this
my
is not
gosh.
the first iteration. This is not your first build.
Oh no.
This is not even the prototype of the first model of something that almost worked. These are all your dry runs and whatever. You already talked about selling a business. And you haven't even talked about the school journey yet.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a whole other, you could almost call it a side structure you're building next to the iceberg, just accruing that, as a documentation to add to yourself, but also just to rewind a little bit. So like, again, kind of a point of this potentially being to save, or not save, but to explain kind of like that past content and what is your kind of hope for, I guess, like how you want to put the content out and what was your thinking when you started recording that?
So
back 2 years ago or whenever you really started, because that is huge to document. It sounds like this thing you built being so huge, like you just started doing these journal entries, it sounds like, essentially, from the few I've seen. Like,
yeah, because it got to the point, like I was sitting there with, I'm a huge Tim Ferriss fan, and I made a video thanking him for everything that he's done. But all of these guys, it was really, all these books that I would read, they were always there. And then they would reference, the crappy past, when I was here and like, there was this really tough time. And they talked like 3 sentences about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that seems like I can kind of, I've gone through that type of stuff, but to actually be there in the moment and be like, this is where I'm at. And I think that's kind of why I didn't even want to necessarily open this the way that I did, but like just the facts of the matter is entrepreneurship. You're in
a tough spot right now.
It's tough. Yeah. I mean, it is like, it's tough, but man, it's also just, it's lovely. Started my first business when I was 20 years old, and that was a painting company. That was just my first official business. I had plenty of other ones, but there wasn't like a lot of content or information about people in that process of like starting it and figuring it out and like the real struggles and the real processes of it. And it was always just kind of tough to hear these guys that had always succeeded, because a lot of these people too, you hear about a lot of the ones that are just really good, like the Hermosis, like, and I know Hermosi has struggled, but at the same time, he's had a lot of success from a very young age. And like, the Tim Ferriss, it's like, okay, it's a little bit tough to like, to reminisce with the struggle like when like he dropped out of Stanford and Harvard or whatever. And it's like, okay, understood.
Yeah. And it's not like these guys aren't transparent about that too. Like
100,
but at the same time, it's like, you still started from there though. You know? It's like, so sorry, your point being that like,
the point being that I would have loved, I think a lot of what I do is trying to create the stuff that I think would have really helped me in the process. And like, I would have loved to have somebody out there that I know has succeeded and watch them struggle straight up. Like, it would have been great to just be like, oh no, I see this guy looking, miserable, and not just hearing about it.
Yeah. Right.
Because you can hear about it, but like when you're actually like in it, and not that this is a giant sob story at all, but really trying to give the inside view of this, because the fact of the matter is I have every bit of confidence that like these sciences to success, like I don't, and there's a book by that name, I haven't read, but it really got to the point where it's like, I really believe wholeheartedly, if I just do all of these things that other successful people have done, there's no reason I shouldn't succeed, because it doesn't actually seem particularly complicated.
Yeah, right. And Hermosi talks about a similar situation that he had, like when he went to some conference with all these, big, huge people. It was like, the range was like people who made like 3 million to 30 million or something like that. And he was at the lower end at the time, he said. And he realized these people making tens of millions more than him weren't any smarter than him, knew nothing more than he did, but I mean, they knew more things, but they weren't smarter, I think is how he put it. And he's just like, dude, I realized, like, holy shit, like, these people are just like me. And I've had, obviously you have that moment probably hits you different at different levels of income, I'm sure. But I've definitely had that realization of just listening in long form to people of his stature or of different, in different industries, doing different things. I'm like, wow, I could totally see myself doing that. Intelligence is not nearly as important as, maybe people think it is,
Yeah. And actually, I want to talk about Alex Hormozi he gave probably one of the most impactful comments that I had. And I'm probably going to butcher the analogy that he made, but he was talking about a ladder, and I don't even remember exactly what he was talking about, but he was talking about how, like, when it comes to business, there's basically kind of three parts to it. You've got the right and the left side of your ladder, the rungs, which could be basically either your intelligence or your business acumen, but then like kind of connecting them together. And just because you aren't this far up the ladder doesn't mean that these two things on the side aren't in place and can't allow you to just basically kind of connect them very quickly.
Once you get there. Yeah.
Once you start even trying to necessarily, I would even say, connect them. And that was really, I thought, very valuable to me, because I had, for a really long time, like with my other businesses and stuff, I felt like I learned a lot of these skills that, like with machining, it's very hard to apply the very specific knowledge that I have from being a manual machinist to any other aspect of life. But the understanding that I had to come with that, of like understanding the whole process beginning to end before you start it, and how to deal with and problem solving and just all these different things. It really helped me feel not so much like an imposter, so I could start actually recording these videos of being like, hey, I think I might have some of these these two foundations on the side, and starting to piece them together.
Right.
And I'm hoping, specifically from him, if there's any success whatsoever, these videos that I've created in the past can hopefully be like, show the process of somebody basically struggling, or
you'll see the video quality, the
video
the situation, the
the
mental, like, I've only seen a few of them so far, kind of just going through it, but I mean, it's very cool to think of it in terms of like 10, 20 years from now, you could be at that very status, and how cool you have these pieces of media from this time back then, before when you were still trying to figure shit out and not sure what was what. Like, imagine, it's the exact same thing he says. Imagine if they documented their journeys, and it's like, well, guess what, Alex? Imagine if you documented your journey. Like, you're starting now, awesome, but like, there's a whole that whole thing, all just to say that's kind of the reasoning for wanting to document this stuff at all, and for what you've done so far up until this point. And now the place you find yourself at is like trying to figure out what content to put out in what order on what platforms, how often, that kind of thing. So is that still something you're trying to figure out? Or?
Oh, for sure. And so this, you and I have talked about this a lot, but I guess for the video's sake, I'm finally at the point now where I think I've accomplished enough in the last 2 years where it's worth actually like putting out some of this old content to be like, hey, remember I said this a year and a half ago, this is what I wanted to try to do. And look, I've actually done this. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. And I also feel like I've got a lot of these systems in place where it is time to really focus a lot of our energy on content creation and getting this story out. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is, where was I going with this? Just,
what the point of the content is, like.
And at that place too, and so I guess where I'm at now, and because here was the other thing too, is I had to basically stop. I mean, I've gone through putting out content and then stopping, because the fact of the matter is, content creation and doing this social media stuff is such a full-time job that people just don't understand. And I could do
it right. Yeah,
I could either put out content or I could build a business, but I really couldn't put out what I felt like was quality content while building a business, because I'm not good at that. I've learned all of these skills by myself. And people just don't get it. So I've recorded a lot of this stuff, and I finally feel like I'm at that point where I can justify, hey, I've come a long enough way, and I think we're really on the verge of really having this thing
ready.
Go wherever it's gonna go.
Yeah. And to put another time stamp on this for the time capsule, it's also crazy. Like, this is for the listeners in 2063, but what just got invented was this AI tool that chops up podcasts for you. So this is another perfect time to start what we're doing right now, because half of the job of chopping something like this up to put out as content, this is probably edited by an AI mostly. I'll probably have, hopefully, if it goes, I've never actually looked into it, but
well, I sent you that one. There's one short clip that has a few of those links that we're going to have to look.
But all the more reason for content, just really start focusing on it.
Focusing on that and get part of this too is this. I do have this whole new entrepreneurial business model, which has a big part of it. It's the EI approach, and that's entrepreneurs of the internet pursuing exponential income driven by expanding influence and secured by enduring investments. So the two brands that I have going on right now are my attempts of implementing those new principles and documenting the process. So what I'm working on now, I feel like I've done enough work on the entrepreneurs of the internet section, where I've built basically the tech company, which I didn't even know I was building a tech company. I thought a tech company, you had to build technology, not just basically have your business be based entirely on it.
It's still considered tech.
Yeah. So when I feel like I've gotten that to a place now, I can really shift and focus more on the expanding influence, which is the content creation, which is going to drive the, hopefully, exponential income. That's kind of the bridge between the two. You good there?
Yeah, I don't know, it was closer than I thought. It startled me.
So yeah, really like kind of shifting into that. And so a big part of this too, everything that I'm doing is my attempt of implementing this new entrepreneurial business model. And just so everybody kind of knows, like this, the way that I'm doing this too is like, I am doing this to enjoy the process. I am trying to do this in such a way, like I've built other businesses and worked so hard just to work for work's sake.
Yeah.
This one, I want to build content like this. I want to educate people. I want to write. I want to make videos. I want to tell a story.
Yeah.
And so like, I think trying to incorporate that into the business world is also one of these new opportunities within the new entrepreneurial business model.
Yeah.
So trying to do that, I think I've figured out enough. And another part of it too, just breaking the fourth wall. I have an amazing buddy now who is willing to help with this video editing. And this is honestly like why I started the beginning of this video the way I did. There's no freaking way I could do this without help. So that's a huge part of this.
No, for sure, man. And that could be its own other topic. I mean, for now, it's a very good segue into what I was going to talk about next. I think you should for sure also mention the audiobook, which is another part of the EI approach. So talk about that first.
So like I mentioned, the EI approach, that is my new entrepreneurial business model, but that's also a book. And
were you in the process of that?
I'm in the as I started to try to explain what I thought the new entrepreneurial business model was, and I have the outline written, I realized I was like, this is such a huge idea. I was like, this would have to take a book. And that's when I realized, I was like, oh, this is why people write books. So but I'm dyslexic and ADD and I cannot write a book. So
another perfect reason to start that shit now. We have other AI tools that can do that shit for you too.
For sure.
Or not all of it, but.
So a big part of this future content that I'm trying to create and with this whole story that I'm trying to tell is really starting with the EI approach, which is the new entrepreneurial business model. And the way that I want to go about doing this is probably in a similar format like this, we shall see, but just me creating an audiobook of me going through, basically it's explaining, we don't need to get too deep into it, because hopefully people will be subscribing to this. And if any of this is interesting, the next stages are really working through working through the new entrepreneurial business model, kind of chapter by chapter, my ideas, and really me just trying to flush them out.
Yeah.
And a lot of this just comes from these business models are basically based on, people like Gary Vee, Alex Hormozy, people that are doing drop shipping and online courses and influencers. There's a new way of making money that literally wasn't around before the internet got to the place where it's at right now.
Yeah.
And so just really trying to figure out what are those actually the sciences within those types, and applying those business principles to personal working, because I think a lot of business is taught how to grow a giant business.
Yeah.
And I think now it should really be, I think what a lot of people are looking for is to how to regain their time back and their time and money.
Yeah.
And so this is kind of
especially after COVID, like that's probably been a huge realization for people that, wow, what is my time worth? Everyone wants to work remote now. Like everyone wants to, like it's definitely shifted how people think about work, I guess, in general.
Yeah, and with my experiences with entrepreneurship, like there are so many opportunities to make money. But I think one of the big problems, I just think we're at this very special place where people are better off working for themselves, but not in the traditional entrepreneurial way, because that's just not what most people want, like to build a big business. I think people just want to be financially in control of their own lives, and that translates to being in control of their own time. And so trying to suss that out basically and figure out what that looks like and explain that with other people and write that book with other people and get their feedback and see if they think they agree or if I'm completely off my rocker.
Wow. But to make it like a collective effort like that, to write it like one large mind almost. That's kind of one of the parts of the entrepreneurs of the internet that I think is really new, that I think fundamentally also I think business is shifting, but I think really I'm trying to really like take this idea of a following and a crowd and a community and really just leverage that as much as possible and be like, hey, do you think these ideas, like, do these resonate with you? Yeah. And as I go through these chapters, bit by bit, because it has to do with like figuring out what you actually want in life and how do you go about that process and how do you figure out what skills you have and how do you build more skills and how do you leverage those and then how do you turn that into money and then how do you turn that into anything else.
Enduring
investments.
And so hopefully working through kind of chapter by chapter and being like, hey, this is what I think. What do you guys think? Taking the input and kind of, chopping that back up and being like, hey, is this a little bit better? And hopefully together, we're building this amazing product, process, whatever.
Yeah. And no, I mean, that's very well put, because it sounds like it's not just like you're coming from, inheriting any set of like skills or any set of anything, I was going to say valuable, but I was like, you're not starting from a place of, I guess privilege, I guess is the more blunt way of putting it. Like you've very much like
one white guy from another white
guy. You've gone, I mean, there's all kinds of privilege, but there's also just a very sense of like, came from very blue collar background, selling a factory or a manufacturing.
Yeah. Fabrication machine. Yeah.
And just, you've just known how to ask the right questions and be like, oh, there's just a faster way of doing this. Oh, who makes money doing what? Let me just follow that chain up. Like that's also a common success story you hear about sometimes, is people who just know how to follow where the paths take them. I get, like, they just know how to ask questions. It's like, okay, well, where does that come from? Oh, so wow, that person makes a lot of money, but don't they need this? So like, how do you get this? It's just like, you understand how systems work. Maybe that's the other way of putting it. It's like people who just have an inherent enjoyment in figuring out how to make systems work and how all the pieces come together. And then like, I could fit in right there, or I could do this part better, or, it's a type of thinking. I think it's like a type of approach to life,
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because I would say that that's very much what the fabrication machine shop was, is we dealt with a lot of engineers, but also hearing you say that too, is I think that fundamentally one of the most valuable things that's going to be one of the most valuable skills in the business world in the future is going to be adaptability and figuring out what these new things are.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because I came from machining, and that was one of the very first industries that was just taken over by automation decades ago with CNC and all that type of stuff. Like, I know dang well this is very much coming down the pipeline. And so it is interesting that you just happened to put a note on that as well, because that's all this whole thing has been trying to do. And I recognize, like, oh my gosh, like this business that I'm doing, I really don't think you get much more of a blue collar upbringing than I had. I mean, my first full-time job was in this fabrication machine shop when I was 9 years old. I mean, I grew up on property. Working. I mean, my whole summers I just worked. I worked. This whole thing, there's not been one aspect of this that I feel like I've known other than just like some business principles from doing it. But like, I mean, this is sales. I didn't really know sales. This is insurance. I don't know insurance. This is tech and CRMs. I didn't know this stuff. I didn't know social media. I didn't know marketing. I'm 1 month away from graduating with my MBA with an emphasis in marketing. So, you know, I've recognized along the process
what you need to know to get to achieve some end. Like that's also part of like this thinking in terms of systems and how to navigate your way through them, or whether to approach them or avoid them. It's like, once you understand how a system works, like that's a skill, you know, like that's a skill, knowing how to do it. It's like, oh, sure, you might not have a skill, but knowing how a system works is like, which skills do what, which skills are worth learning for me, and what can I do if I have those skills, you know, and how can I fit and work in this system with the skills needed in each part of that system, kind of thing.
You know, and that's a great, you know, it's interesting that you say that, because I think one thing that needs to be said too with this is I recognized, you know, this whole entrepreneurial business principle, the EI approach, this book that I want to write. I also recognized talking about privilege, and I really, you know, I think that word is used a lot. But I did have the opportunity to be raised by entrepreneurs and be surrounded by entrepreneurs. And I remember having a conversation going back to when the wildfires came, and my other business I thought was up in flames, talking with my other cousin.
Up in flames.
Literally up in flames. I didn't know for 2 weeks if I had anything. I had a CNC machine, I had a forklift, saws, welders, all this stuff. Had no idea.
Was it insured at least?
Like, no. And it decimated the whole town. So like I didn't lose my stuff, but I ended up having to sell. Anyway, that's a whole nother video.
Also, they taught a lot of other people here shit too. Like a lot of people changed their lives because of it, even if they weren't directly affected. It's crazy.
Oh yeah. But I ended up evacuated at my aunt's house. A bunch of our family was just there. And I was talking with my cousin, who's quite a bit older than me. He's at least, I think he's 10 or 15 years older, and just recognizing to him, because his parents weren't entrepreneurs, but the other ones were, and just understanding that like there's this whole mentality, like he'd never really had an example of somebody going out and really doing it and working for themselves and being in charge.
Right.
And so I realized too that part of this of like, hey, this whole new entrepreneurial business model, there is an unbelievable amount of opportunity. At the same time, I don't think most people are really designed to go out and chase that per se, because entrepreneurship is scary. It's hard. It's difficult. There's not a lot of information about actually how to do it and do it well. I don't think there's a lot of examples of people getting through and struggling. There's only the people that have succeeded and then are kind of talking about how they had a hard time.
It's like a selection bias. Like the only people you're going to hear from usually are the people who are successful because they're successful enough to have the time to tell you about it, kind of thing.
So if nothing else,
it's a little selection bias.
Yeah. And so even if nothing else, documenting this, you can, if it goes all up in flames, you can see what I did wrong.
It's going to be you're going to be the first person to have, the first failure to become a content lord out of your failure. Like,
there's that. But oh gosh, where was I going with this though?
Not everybody's an entrepreneur.
Thank you. So what I finally did realize is like, I do think that this new entrepreneurial business model, I think quite frankly, I mean, I think it's great. And
Yeah.
I think it's very valuable. But I also recognize, and we were talking about this too. There's there's entrepreneurs that just they're not going to do this. They're not going to step out.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of with more this business, more than just this idea. I had this idea of the new entrepreneurial business model, but then I realized nobody should listen to me because I haven't proven it. So that's when I was like, okay, I gotta try to do this myself. And then and then I realized, okay, what I'm actually doing, it's a little bit ridiculous for me to ask and expect everybody else to do this, to just go and try to build a, I wouldn't tell anybody to do what I'm doing,
Yeah.
but like to actually just go and be like, hey, try to figure this out. It's just not reasonable. Like, we'll go back to the mother situation, to ask them to be like, hey, I know right now you're working a full-time job and you have a family to take care of, but you should also take some time to figure out another career that you don't have to do this. Like, that's pretty unreasonable.
Right.
So kind of it got to the point of like, okay, you've got these ideas. Seth, nobody's going to listen to you. They not
Until
only
you've
are they
done it.
going to, they shouldn't listen to you until you've proven any of this. And I'm like, okay. And then like as I
No
was
one wants to
doing
hear
it,
you talk about what the top of fucking Everest looks like.
Yeah.
But because you look at all the pictures
Yes.
and know it really well, you're like, yeah, but there's this thing up there that's really cool. I don't know how cold it is. I didn't go.
I didn't
I'm just
go.
saying.
I just heard. Like,
I
I think it's a
saw-
great idea.
you
You
guys
should
ever
tell.
look at
You
the
should go
Instagram?
and tell me how it is.
Yeah, right.
But so that
Let me
kind
know
of
when you get there. Take some pictures, huh?
Yeah.
Will ya? Send them to me so I can tell other people.
so that kind of
That'll be
inspired.
$5.
Yeah, that kind of inspired me to just prove it. And not only
Yeah.
that, and as I was doing it, it was like, okay, this isn't reasonable for people, for me to for people to really do this. Like, there needs to be an easier way. And then that's kind of when this whole, and I don't know how all of this has come together, but that's part of this
Yeah.
evolution of this insurance agency of, I've created this where, it could be pretty lucrative for me as well. But even more important than that is I'm hoping with these new systems and technologies and the entrepreneur of the internet type stuff, I think I've built a system that really can hopefully be the best job in America, where people can kind of come in and plug in to these opportunities that are out there. And hopefully I've come and curated it a little bit with some good training and some good systems where it's like, hey, you can pretty easily jump into this system and take advantage of this.
With a little bit of training.
Yeah.
And a little bit of overhead. Just
And
get in there and make money quickly.
yeah. And so I guess, and I haven't really even put it in this perspective, but just talking it through, kind of the whole new entrepreneurial business model, which I still think, my job is, and this is the other thing too, the job, quote unquote, that I've created through insurance falls hand in hand with the new entrepreneurial business model that I have, because it does allow you to control your own finances. It does allow you to set your own schedule. It does allow you to make a ton of money. It does allow you to make residual incomes. So it's so that's kind of how all of this has evolved into this. And still very much figuring it out.
Yeah.
And like testing and trying to implement these things, because these are all just ideas.
Yeah.
Very much in the figuring it out process and trying to
Yeah.
document it process.
Yeah, totally. But and that's, that's again, super amazing that you have the foresight just to document it. Like, that in and of itself, again, not to hopefully break the fourth wall too much, but like doing this documentation, like building a business is one thing, or even just establishing yourself and who you are, like, is one thing, but trying to create content about that on top of that is like a whole other thing. And, again, the purpose of this video, trying to explain that chunk of it, like why the content creation, but also where you've gotten and everything, like, and kind of my next thing I wanted to get into as far as like where you're at now. You talked about, obviously the systems you have to build and the technological side of starting a business. That's all pretty much ready to go. Phase 2, the team, and obviously the funding. So like, where are you at with the team aspect of this?
Yeah. Well, to go,
you originally, when you mentioned me, I was like, that's
Yeah.
the perfect segue into the team. And
Yeah,
then I
yeah.
asked about the EI approach first.
So
now we're back to that.
that's kind of, the segue. I mean, you have played, and I know we've talked about this a lot in the last few days, but like, dude,
Not on camera.
Not on not on
I
camera.
want to hear you say it on camera.
The biggest team member that I have so far is my video editor, my dude, Evan here, which I can't tell you, just kind of a quick backstory. Like, him and I don't even know. We've been talking for 6 months, 9? I don't even know if it's been 9 months.
Yeah, it's probably been almost a year now.
Has it been that long? Has it been that long? I can't remember when we reached out.
It was definitely summer.
Was it? Okay.
It was hot outside.
Yeah. So I reached out to this guy with just looking for video.
How did you hear about me again?
I reached out to the school. We went to the same school. I reached out. There's a digital media program in our school. I reached out to them, said, hey, do you know of anybody? He was an old student. So I was like, hey, I need help. I was like, I'm trying to do this thing. I don't have anybody.
Super stoked this guy gave out my name, but yeah. Glad it turned out into something.
Yeah. So that I paid you some money to do some first videos, which honestly, I don't even know if we ever even, it's either way.
We still in the figuring out process. Like, you came to me, it's almost kind of like blows my mind, like when you came to me, because it's like it was kind of the same situation with Vance. Like, these people who like maybe aren't even quite ready for video, but just really fucking want it. Like, but maybe could do without it and could do some other things first. And I'm just kind of there along for the ride now, because it was just at the right place at the right time. And I'm just going to be as helpful as I can to, whatever cause makes sense to me. And so, but yeah, it was just very much a sense of like, I've got all this content, I've got all this video, but I'm trying to build this thing. And like, another reason I think this is the perfect time to start this conversation is because now you've said so many of these things to me so many times, I actually am starting to understand it. Because that first meeting, dude, was so difficult to know, like, what am I doing? What are you doing? Like, because there really is so much to it. You're building this technology company. You're so many streams of revenue within that, just generating the leads, selling the leads, the CRM, actual insurance policy, like all these things within that. You're trying to build the content on top of that. You're starting 2 different channels, one channel devoted to this business, Sorrel, one channel devoted to just your lifestyle, which you have a bunch of content for. You have some content for that. Like, there's so many overlapping principles and things and ideas. And now, like, the fact that I just word vomited a lot of it is reassuring to me that I'm actually starting to understand it. But yeah, those are the kinds of things that I think, like, now's the chance to to establish what that stuff is. At least a lot of it. And so you did mention you have those 2 things, the Giddy Pessimist and Sorrel, kind of as the main like content platforms right now. And so you're in the process of building the team for this video guy. You just figured I'll check that off first.
Well, because
some reason,
because I knew,
rather than like an accountant or like a typical business person.
Because this actually goes to part of this goes with the expanding influence. This is the second part of the EI approach, is the expanding influence. And I knew that I needed to start getting this content out, although like that was a year ago and we still basically have got very little out.
Right.
Because
think of all the idea for, or like all the strategy you've built in the meantime.
But you were right. I probably wasn't ready yet for video. So just
maybe, I don't know.
We'll talk. We've recorded a lot. I guess we'll talk about those kind of 2, because you were the very first team member. I knew I needed a video editor. And that you a year ago. I knew I couldn't do it. I knew that there was no way, the amount of time, like where I'm at with my skills, even if I was really good at this, there's just not enough time to create the amount of content I want to create while actually making progress doing what I need to do. And I knew that. And actually I forget his name, but one of the kind of leading YouTubers said that. He's like, one of the best things I ever did was hire a video editor. So I knew I needed to do that very early, because I really do think, well, with the whole breaking the fourth wall and trying to build this with the following, like, I mean, I'm pretty confident in these plans. And so, but it doesn't, I've recognized going through business. I used to think marketing was the creative people that wanted to get a business degree did. And now I've realized after 15 years of doing it, it's probably the most valuable part.
There's actually some tricks up our sleeve.
Absolutely. And so like recognizing the value of marketing, I knew I had to get this content out there because I knew it could drive where I was going to go. I knew that this was going to be the values and leads and getting the information out there for agents. So,
yeah.
So I knew that I needed to get a video editor, and you have been so much more than that too. I mean, you've done amazing on video editing.
So I realize how volatile video editing, how oversaturated the industry is. So I'm like, I got to learn some other skills to tack onto the resume.
And yeah, so you've spent a lot of time listening to, helping me articulate what I'm trying to do, and helping me actually realize how big of a project this really is. And so
it's crazy to think about that. Like, you can have an idea for something, but not really understand the scope of it until you.
Yeah, because it's so easy for me to understand. I can just jump back from here and here, and everything makes complete sense to me, and it's all very connecting.
Yeah.
But then when I try like the first meeting with a stranger and being like, yeah, but that's not exactly what I'm doing, and like, yeah, there's two brands, but they're really like the same right now. I've never taken too big of a bite. I've just had to chew a hell of a lot longer than I was expecting to. And this is no different.
Grizzly, a lot of grizzle in this piece of steak.
Yes. And this is really no difference because, and this was my thing too, is I've approached this business very different than all of the rest of them. Is like, I had a much bigger plan in mind going into this of like trying to enjoy this process and really trying to build something very long term with content creation. And so going into this, and also wanted to try my hand at some other business ideas as far as like having different brands and maybe possibly building one specifically to sell. But a big part of the EI approach, it's not just entrepreneurial, it's not just business, it has a lot to do with lifestyle. And so lifestyle, but then within that lifestyle is understanding business principles of how to create the lifestyle that you really want.
Right.
So the Giddy Pessimist, which is what this video will probably be most of it on, this is my lifestyle brand. This is the one that I started a long time ago. It wasn't even called that. It was called Sorel. But this is the one I started quite a while back, documenting like, I got to figure out how to make money with my camera and with my computer.
Right.
So that was my lifestyle one. And then as I kind of developed these business principles, I realized one of my passions is business. I love business. And so I wanted to kind of separate that and really be able to dive deep into that, but not just segment whatever myself into that specific niche, because also I want to possibly build this brand up to see if I can sell it.
Right.
The insurance aspect of it. So what I'm doing, a lot of this stuff, I'm the content that I'm creating and the business principle I'm trying to figure out is how to leverage a lot of different content on different platforms. So I've got the Giddy Pessimist, which is my lifestyle brand. And then underneath that, I've got Sorel, which is specifically for insurance, agency building, insurance, and applications of business principles. And like with the Giddy Pessimist, I'll talk about business and kind of just the generals. And then what I'll try to do is bring it down into Sorel and really be like of
those principles.
Yes, of me trying to implement these exact business principles that I'm talking about.
You put it as like a know-it-all channel and a do-it-all channel or something?
Yeah, that's not a bad way of putting it. Yeah, and so there's going to be kind of a lot of similar content at the moment of because we're talking about very similar things. But in order to do that, each one of these channels has its own Facebook, YouTube, TikTok,
with their own audiences,
Instagram, and own different audiences.
Yeah.
And so leveraging this content is it just takes a lot. I mean, people don't, like, I've dove so deep into social media management, which is funny because if you looked at my social media right now, none of them particularly are crushing it, but I've got 9 different platforms and it's me. Right. I had an assistant for a little bit that was fine and helped get a lot of things established, but she's no longer with me. And so now it's just it's so overwhelming to build a business, an insurance business with a tech company and marketing, and then also create all of this content for 9 different platforms and then try to sell insurance all while doing this and trying to like maintain all of these and
get the right people to,
So kind of where we were at, like, as you obviously know, we spent a lot of time over the last month or so building this or creating this funding video because I feel like I've got all of these plans in place. I have job descriptions written. I have a lot of these SOPs, standard operating procedures written. I've got onboarding created. I've got consultants ready to go. I've got websites built. I've got marketing campaigns ready to run. It's just literally like, so I'm looking for funding because I am at a place I do not think I can efficiently run this machine by myself. I cannot run a marketing campaign, and to do that efficiently, I need to run it a big campaign across more of the country. That means there's going to be a lot of leads coming in. Like, I need to be able to look at these metrics and know what's working and what isn't working with the A/B campaigns. But also, I can't spend all of this money on leads and not nurture them on the back end.
Right.
So there's this whole thing too. But with that, there's also tweaks in the system that need to be monitored because there's also testing that needs to be done in here.
Yeah.
So there's those two things, and then there's actually creating content for all of these things and then putting it out there. So
Right.
I could do all of these things, but it just is not efficient.
Yeah. Right.
And so I've created a video looking for investors, either angel investors, friends or family, if there's any type of venture capital out there. I actually just had a very exciting conversation last night with one of my professors who is quite the entrepreneur, and he's quite an experienced gentleman, but I'm pretty encouraged to see where that might actually end up because he saw this video. He had some questions that I think I was able to address, and he's like, all right, at least.
Does that mean like there needs to be more questions answered in the a future version
we
of
could
the
probably
video or
do
something?
it better. I mean, there's a few things, and to be fair, I would love people to go check this video out, but to be fair, I've never seen anybody make a video for funding.
Right, yeah.
So, like, first and foremost,
It's like edited,
it's
like,
edited.
Well, I mean,
And-
even just a video, I guess, at all.
Just a video, but not only that, like, this is also from a dude, myself, who's never done this type of funding.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't even know what I've done a bunch of research on this.
But dude, you have all the terminology. Like, people really should go watch it because it's a gem, in my opinion.
Oh,
Like,
he did great.
no, not even the editing, like just the content in it. It's like, you so well explain. You're like, look, here's my business plan. This is what it is. Yeah, we used a couple little fancy animations and stuff to supplement it a little bit, make it a little bit less dry. But really, it's like, you're like, I have all these things in place. These are the risks. These are the potential upsides. This is what could actually happen. This is how I'll make money. This is how soon. This is like an actual business plan. Like, that's like, why were we never told that was a thing in high school type of thing? Like, it was one of those moments. It's like, it's so rare to see in the wild. It's like, wow, it's like a lion or something. It's like an actual business plan and somebody who actually spoke it out, and somebody like, obviously when you're in those realms, maybe it's just something you see more often. Like, obviously the sharks at Shark Tank see this kind of thing a dime a dozen, but yeah, like to put it out in a video format like that and to explain all the things you have in place already, leaps and bounds. And the fact that you've thought ahead into a different industry, you didn't just like invent some little product like on Shark Tank and like you have to answer all these questions about how much it costs to make it. Like, there's nothing physical here to deal with. Like, you have no widgets. Like, you're just and again, like the content on top of that is just a whole other leg of this, like 2 channels, so, I don't even know what the point really was I'm trying to make, but
yeah, I'll jump in there then, because this is part of the thing. You're making me smile because this is way different than anything other business that I've done, because this is the part like I really love and that I really enjoy and that this is really fun. And the part of the reason I really did want to create some of this content is because and
like,
this,
even if nothing comes from that exact funding video, it's there, and
it's
just
there.
a cool thing to have made. Like,
and not just that is, I don't think, I think what is kind of valuable in storytelling and in YouTube and content creation is doing different things and doing things that not everybody's going to do. And quite frankly, like the plans that I have, I don't think there are very many people that are ever going to want to do what I'm trying to do. I don't think there's a lot of people that are ever going to have to come up with an actual funding proposal to go out there and try to find funding. I mean, there's definitely people. There's a whole segment of people, but those are very few and far between.
Okay.
And
Because why? Like, you think
because most people are not entrepreneurs. Most people are not ever going to build a business that is going that one they would even think about funding, but two would even be really plausible for funding. I mean, realistically, like most people when they start a business, they do it themselves. They are all self-funded. They will always be self-funded. They might take out a loan.
Yeah.
But like it's never, I've built this thing to be scalable.
Right.
To do, and I didn't even realize this from the beginning, but like I am documenting as much as this blue collar redneck hippie could be building a tech company. Like that's exactly what it is. And I didn't even know that, but I don't think anybody else has documented really that process.
Zuckerberg. Yeah.
No. And especially not accidentally doing it. Like I didn't even know.
Yeah.
So just
falling into it.
Yeah.
It's definitely a fucking age we're in where like content is king, that's an expression out there, but even the younger people, the younger entrepreneurs or even wantrepreneurs, like even they aren't spending that time and energy to like sit down and do these journal entries with the camera over the day or like get a video editor, like think about content on like a much bigger scale than just like, oh, I should post to my story every once in a while. Yo, what's up guys? I'm doing pretty well. Like I wouldn't consider that documenting it.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing, I suppose, but it's like, yeah, that's just another thing that makes this whole process of yours unique. It's just the fact that, the level to which you're documenting it and the effort into which you're putting how to put it out there kind of thing. Like, and yeah, just the fact that you're at a place where I think another thing that just another thing that makes it unique, very few people
keep going,
like,
man.
actually, very few people actually need like, okay, I literally can't do anything more until I have other people now. Like
that's
which, everybody else entrepreneur wise, like you would think working from the reverse, like, damn, I got to work like this hard. And then finally, once I make this much, now I can just barely start to afford to pay somebody to work, a little bit less and then pay one more person, and like pay more one person. Like, but where you're like an overinflated balloon, like I have to get some people right now if I want to let the air out of this thing, like otherwise it's going to go out of control kind of thing.
And I think that's fundamentally,
it's a very unique position to be in.
Well, sure. I think what that actually is what you're talking about, referring to, I think that is actually the tech company part of things. This is fundamentally,
maybe that is typical of tech companies.
It's how it, you literally,
you could grow too fast, or
not even just that, you build it to a place where you do all of these, hopefully. And again, this is just my experience, not fumbling through this, not even knowing I was doing this, but just my experiences of this, and then kind of recognizing, oh, this is what I'm doing. But tech companies, and this is a lesson I would love to actually go into in a different video, but the difference between like us working self-employed, small business, entrepreneur, medium-sized business, corporation, with a tech company, this is a very different type of business. And here's a little thing that I realized. The EI approach is basically how everybody should do their own mini tech company. I didn't realize that until I got done with that entrepreneurial TV show that I was on. And I realized, oh, that's when I learned, oh, this is what a tech company is. But fundamentally, so I built all these systems and processes, and you basically do that pre-launch, pre-revenue. You can't, and then you get to the point where it's like, okay, we flip this switch. It's called launching. And, usually to flip the switch, and this has happened to me a few times, nothing happens. You're like, shit, this isn't, some things aren't connected right. Or you flip the switch and there was a huge leak over here and you're like, oops, this actually worked too good. But then you actually get to the point where hey, if this works, we are going to have all hands on deck, because it's called infinitely scalable. You go from nothing to nothing to nothing to infinitely scalable of in one flip of the switch, you could basically overnight, and this is only true of tech, when from overnight,
because the margins are so huge.
You don't have to fill a pipeline. That's what it's called when you're have an actual product, is you have to ship all these things, you have to get them onto the shelf, you have to do this. But I could overnight literally go from having no customers to running a lead campaign that is hitting all 50 states, and I could spend $100,000 a week on this and generate $200,000 worth of leads and have a marketing campaign where I could be hiring, this is all completely obviously made up and relative, but I could be hiring 100 agents a week to spend, to be working
to be able to keep up with the
$50,000 of leads. And I could do that in virtually overnight. That's infinite scalability.
Yeah.
You can
Which
sign
is
up.
intimidating. I can imagine.
It's terrifying. Yeah. There was a section, I'd actually like to talk about this. I'm not going to lie, and I know this isn't what this video is for, but for a pretty large block of this, part of the experience of being an entrepreneur of this tech company was I was absolutely terrified of the success. Because once I kind of realized, especially at the beginning of this, I did not think about having a SaaS that I could sell. I did not think about leads. But then when I put this all in place and truly started to realize the size of what could happen, it scared the shit out of me, and it still does. But I'm like, all right, I think I'm ready to ride this bull.
Yeah.
But it's terrifying. And the other thing too is you can absolutely grow too fast.
Yeah.
That was been one of the things. That's why
talk about that example you told me about how it was like the first time you had some system like this working for you, and there were some leads that went.
Oh yeah,
in a smaller scale system.
This is kind of not even like a launch, but as I was building this system, paying a consultant to program this CRM, and just when I say program a CRM, you're not actually writing code, but you're basically within the system creating all the workflows within there, and all of the notifications and all of the automations and all of this stuff. And so I had my first consultant do this, and we built my first ad campaign, ran my first ad, ran them through the first automation, and there was a couple iterations of this, couple different ad iterations, and then we actually ran it through and got some responses. But I didn't find out until weeks later that, because I didn't get any notifications from them and I didn't go check this particular workflow, that my ads that I had run, it had worked. It had gotten them all the way through the system, and I didn't spend a lot of money on it. But so weeks later, it was such a cool, not even bittersweet because it was so sweet, but these leads had worked them through my system, through my automation, from the lead that I had created to the automation that I had programmed to the end. They said right there, sitting there, they said, I am ready to talk with an agent right now. They hit the little reply. So there, sitting there is what we would call basically a qualified live transfer lead, which are worth hundreds of dollars, or over $100 in the industry. But because this is, I didn't know what I was doing. We didn't program the notification. So I didn't notice that these leads had qualified themselves until weeks later. So that's why I can't flip this, why I don't feel comfortable.
That's good. You had that experience though. I mean, just to float on it for a second, it could be one thing, I'm pretty sure this is going to, I can't imagine that feeling of actually knowing what's going to happen when you're going to flick the switch on. It's cool that you had that experience of actually operating the CRM on, it sounds like maybe just a smaller scale or for a shorter time.
I would even call it first iteration. It's totally different now, but that was
test one. And even that just churned so much shit out. You're like, holy crap.
Yeah.
You had to shut it right off.
Totally. Absolutely.
And it was a little bit of a panic moment because why? It was just
because it's
obviously you said the good outweighed the bad, but what is the downside to what you're realizing you're dealing with?
If I would have done that on large scale, because I think I spent, I don't even know, not that much, probably $150 over a few days or something like that. But to do this at scale and to do this efficiently, if I would have done that, but have spent a couple of thousands of dollars, that could have been a bunch. That could have just been a giant waste of money. And if I was using other people's, but the other thing too is I was way more concerned there, the ads and seeing the impressions, because there's a lot that has, there's a lot. And I also would fully admit I'm an extreme perfectionist. I like having my hands in a lot of these different things, and I really like knowing the details.
Can vouch for that. Yeah. In the editing process, it's good to be in there and know what kind of colors you want and fonts and shit like that. But that's just the amazing part about this too. You're at a point where you've had your hands in all of it, and you can have your hands in all of it and see okay, then slowly start to delegate it away, perhaps, or whatever.
Because I can't. There's
Yeah,
no way
right.
I can be, because like at that, if I was to using that example of the very first iteration of the lead that worked and the CRM that came through, the CRM had like that automation that I had, there was like nothing in it. I have so many different workflows now, and I have a bunch of different leads that could come in. But not only that, like because a big part of this business is the lead generation, it's very important to look at these advertising. Like there needs to be a very conscious eye on these advertisings and these split campaigns to really see what is and isn't working. Like that needs to take a lot.
Yeah.
You also need to have another person that is very much, at least for the beginning when it's flipped on, looking at these automations and making sure that you're not having tons and tons of these leads that are working, piling up somewhere that you're not getting notifications from. Because there are inherently,
to make sure they're moving through the machine and not getting clogged somewhere.
Absolutely. This is all brand new, dude. I mean, I have programmed this from absolutely nothing. Right. So every little connection, every time somebody says something, every time somebody replies, that has to be programmed with what workflow are you going to go into? Who gets a notification? Where does it go to? Like, how long do they stay there? When do they get the next notification? How do you know, like, did the agent get notified? What double check do you have that if your agent doesn't reach out to this lead, that this lead isn't just sitting there? So and is
there a way to test this whole thing before you
No. I mean, yes, I can do it. I absolutely can do it.
Yeah.
But I have to create leads somewhere. So that's why I can either, the way if I need to do it myself, I could basically
create a fake email account.
No, I can launch the marketing. If I had a marketing, I can launch the marketing and basically do it a small ad spend, which is really inefficient.
Exactly. That's the thing. The more you spend, the more efficient it is.
Yeah, that's the problem. So it's like I can do this. I just can't do this efficiently.
Right.
Like because I could spend pretty much, I mean, about the equivalent, like I'm just ran my ads in Oregon and Washington. Actually, no. When I did it, I just ran it in Oregon because that's the only place that I'm licensed in. But for about the same ad spend, like I could have done this over the entire United States and gotten a much bigger sample size. And that's actually, in my opinion, more important right now to dial in the advertising. But in order to do that, there's going to be a lot of leads that come in. And so like, I can either just completely waste these leads, or I can run this ad set over a big sample size to get efficient money, but then I basically have to turn this off and then go nurture these leads, which I can do that, but that's not, the system is literally based on long-term nurturing. So the way that the system really should go is I should flip this on and leads should just continue to trickle in.
Right.
I need to look at the leads, making sure that I'm not like totally overspending on certain demographics. I need to make sure that the system is actually working, that the leads are coming through. And if they're not, like if something's not working, I need to be able to turn these off, you know? Because like if I'm spending a lot of money, but nothing is converting in my system, I need to turn it off and make sure I'm not just wasting money.
Right.
Those are just like two of these aspects. That doesn't include creating any content for any of this stuff. Right. This is just lead generation for life insurance. This isn't lead generation for recruiting agents. This isn't lead generation for selling the CRM or the other leads.
Right.
So it's like, you know, I can do these things and I will happily do these things. But to do this, I'm at this place, you know.
The lead generation machine has to be the first thing though. Because you're either going to sell that machine first or sell the leads first or next. I mean, like the next step is to either sell the machine itself, white label it.
But here's yes and no, because here's the other problem is I could put other leads into this system and just test this system, but there's no good quality leads out there.
Right.
And specifically not the ones that are going to be ideal for my system, because you can buy higher quality leads, but they're like direct mailers. They're very expensive. My lead system is basically I want to put a bunch of cheap leads in there and have them qualify themselves. So you this
to keep
is
the machine kind of lubricated almost.
Exactly.
Like just keep it
that's the whole thing. Is this is basically just an efficiency machine where you can run through a bunch of different. You can run through significantly more leads without ever picking up the phone. That's all this really is. And then hopefully that's where it's at right now. And then hopefully as we get more leads through it, we get the system better and better and better. And we get our educational content more and more on point, and we get our leads higher and higher quality so that everything is just getting better and better. But all of that takes constant attention on all of these fronts.
Right.
So with the team building, you know, kind of coming back to it, like the content creation, there's so much content that needs to be put out now that I think
that's not where the pipeline issue is.
That's not where the pipeline issue, although I still think that's like the most important long-term thing is to get this story out and to tell the story. And then with the team building, I'm talking with investors, trying to get in front of investors. I've got a couple of teammates, couple of people from school some of them were on my teams that I am trying desperately to recruit. But it's at that point, you know, I don't have any money. Right. I don't have any money to pay them. So I either have to, I'm sitting here working my butt off trying to sell them. Like however you were convinced somehow to sit here and be like, hey man, I'll help you out.
I mean, I don't know. It's just like, it seems rather obvious to me that it's just like, this is a very lucrative idea and you're not a dumb person, you know. And I, you know, like, I wouldn't say like I have a guaranteed fallback or anything, but like I have the video stuff I'm doing on the side. Like I'm just comfortable enough where like I can kind of invest my time and, you know, kind of be in the learning phase, like Hormozy puts it. Like you got to be in the learning phase, but obviously you got to make money at the end of the day. So find ways to make money so that you can really learn.
The fact that you have that mentality is so rare, and I'm so fucking lucky and blessed that I've stumbled upon you. Dude, it is. Trust me. Maybe not the mentality, but also being in that situation where you do have the time and a little bit of income.
Yeah, that is maybe the right overlap, because it's probably like a lot of people just will not work for free, you know, at a certain point, or we'll only do it in very specific situations, but it's usually, I don't know, it's usually only on something that like they themselves are building, or they're just comfortable enough. Like, I don't know. The only time I guess you really hear about those sorts of things are people who are like, they have their doctorates or they have some corporate job and a ton of money saved. They're like, I don't want to do this, I'm miserable. And they just start something kind of new and they have time to make way less money, but in the pursuit of making more money in the future. Like, that's kind of how I see this. It's like, you know, but I don't even have, I'm not even necessarily like financially comfortable. It's just like, but I'd rather not try to make, I don't know, be in a miserable job. I'd rather just cut that part out of the process, be a little tight on money now, but like really learn and really put myself on the right track early on.
And here's the thing. I'm just going to kind of take this on a little bit of a tangent.
That's fine.
And just for the group, building the team, I should say, is, and I've told this to you before, but I want to re-emphasize it, man. Just the fact, like what we're talking about, just the fact of what you said, and the fact that you are willing to work for me for free right now, and the fact that you're willing to have these conversations, and that you're willing to say these things to me and have these conversations. I literally cannot express how valuable that is to me as an entrepreneur and as a person, to just know that somebody has like bought into it, even the littlest bit. So like, one, just such an immense thank you to that.
Yeah, man.
And also too, like just recognizing how valuable and rare that is, but also too, like me recognizing why building a team is one of the absolutely most important thing to success is, you know, you can have people that are capable, but that's not what a good team is about. Like having people that have bought into it and actually like really, you know, believe in what's going on.
Yeah. And there's different levels at which like building a team can mean a ton of different, like there's a ton of different variables at different levels, you know, like when you just own a little restaurant, it's like building a team is just like hiring employees kind of thing.
I would actually see, and I'm glad that you said that, because I didn't even mention that. I'm literally looking at this much different. I'm not hiring people.
That's another cool thing.
I'm not hiring people. Like I've hired people. I hired an assistant. I don't
Tried
want to
that.
hire
Been
people.
there.
I want to build a team.
Right.
And there's this nuanced thing that I'm trying to figure out and I'm trying to learn. And we talked about this a little bit about basically kind of the managers and the
CEOs.
no, like basically the people that you can delegate responsibilities to and other people you have to hold their hand. And I'm at the point now where like I have to have people to build a team. Like I'm not hiring for certain positions. I'm building a team of certain people
And I'll
that
find
can
a
do
position
that
for
can
'em.
do things. And like it's really
Yeah.
interesting as I say that. I want to throw a huge caveat onto this because I also don't think that you should just hire. I think when it comes for hiring positions, I think you need to have that position designated and then hire for that person. And I think there is a distinct difference between like, hey, knowing what you have and like hiring people and then building a team. Because like for me, I'm not going to be able to go I'm not going to be able to go hire a full production team.
Right.
You know, I'm not going to be able to go hire an executive assistant with 15 years of experience that's worth $150K
Right away.
I have to build a team of people that like have the skills that have the personality and the mindset and the desire and the people that want to do this shit.
Yeah, it's like the entrepreneurs is what you need. It's like the people who don't need to have ultimate final say on things, but they're willing to do the job that needs to be done for the greater good, whatever that is, and be willing to sacrifice kind of thing.
Yeah, well, and also too, what I would say, and gosh, dude, I'm really trying to figure this out because like this is the type of content that I really want to create. Of like, I don't think that there's okay. I know that there are courses for this. I'm sure in some of the very, all over the place. But like to actually sit down and have these conversations with people of like really trying to figure out like, gosh, dang, how do you hire? Like, how do you build a team like this? Because it's also
maybe Indeed,
huh?
maybe Indeed. I don't know.
Well, at this certain point in the business, because like people you can hire this, but like with a tech startup, with a tech, like one of these things, it's not. You don't guarantee. There's no guarantees this is going to work.
Yeah.
So it's a very specific type of person. And not only that, like it's not even just like I need free labor of semi-competent people. I think even I need very competent people, but more than that, I need people that are really understand what's going on and buying into it because like I don't give a shit about this business. Like I'm trying to change the world.
Yeah, right.
Trying to create, I really want people that understand
Making money is just the first step. Like,
that's it's going to be an inevitable byproduct.
Yeah.
And so like people that understand that are like, yeah, we're going to make good money, but no, we're going to figure out this new way of working. Or like the people that are like, yeah, no, I know that this, that there needs I know I want to work for myself, but there's no good options. I don't know how to do it. Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
Or the people that are like, I know that I just want to work my ass off for 2 or 3, for the traditional the traditional jobs are not going to work for me. I want to figure out how I can make a ton of money by busting my ass for 3 to 6 months a year and then stepping away, or being able to do that for 1 week a month and stepping away.
Or just find some sense of purpose or meaning in my life in some way. Because again, like this whole approach that you're talking about, and I know I've mentioned this before, but like what really resonated with me the first time I really started to understand it and hear about it from you was like, I'm trying to build a model, as in you, trying to build a model of like, if you feel directionless or aimless or like you don't know what you want to do, here are some like real steps you could take now with this model, potentially if you're this type of person, to have success in life, whatever that means for you. And like, here's a formula of how to do it, and be successful and not have to worry about.
And hopefully more than just a formula, formula, and here's a formula and
a story
and a opportunity
story too.
Well, a story, but also an opportunity. But here's a formula and here's a job that you could jump into and start instantly. Like, here's the first step. If you wanted to do this, I don't care. Like, this is not something I don't expect people to do this forever. I expect people like this is something that hopefully is a tool. The job, if it was ever that way, this is a way for you to get out of your situation, to kind of not have to worry about the financial issues of life and figure it out from there.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's
It's a
it
lot
seems
easier to
yeah,
figure things out when you don't have
for
to
sure.
worry about money.
For
Like,
sure.
he
And
talks about that, Hermosi, like the different levels of comfort at different income levels or whatever.
money will not take care of all of your problems.
Yeah.
But it will take care of all of your money problems.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And those are a lot of good problems
Those
to
are
have
pretty
solved.
much all my problems at the moment.
Dude, yeah, right. It's like, yeah, exactly. But it's, again, it's like you could say privilege, but it's just like, I feel pretty fortunate too, where like I feel good enough about my understanding and my place in the world, and, you know, everything from like spirituality to what I want to do and what I want to be, and just like understanding of life and, you know, big picture and everything, like good enough understanding of all that stuff where once I have the money thing figured out, I think I'll have everything figured out, kind of thing. Like, you know, I don't, everybody goes through these things in different order, but it's like until I'm, you know, once my cup starts overflowing, I can really start pouring it out the way I really
Yeah.
want to, type of thing, you know?
And I got to a point like this this was like the switch that finally flipped, was I decided I want to pursue that. I am no longer going to let money dictate my life, the lack of money, basically.
Right.
And so this whole process, and it's been a freaking struggle, and I knew it was going to be like, this is how it goes. This is also with the exponential income. Like, it has been an absolute struggle, but I have been trying to focus so hard on figuring out that money piece. And I would encourage other people, like, I feel like so few people are actually like, listen, I'm just going to figure out how to make a lot of money. Not, and I hesitate to say it that way, but I feel like so many other people just think about how do I make more money, what I'm doing, more money, what I'm doing. And it's like, there are
Yeah.
opportunities if you do want it to, and I'm not saying everybody should, but I got to that point of like, I'm just going to solve the money problem. I'm just going to do it one time. It might take a few years, but I'm going to figure this out so that I never have to figure it out again.
Right.
And I think that is a new opportunity that has not been around for most of our civilization, and now it is.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of what this whole EI approach is trying to do, is like, hey, let's be done with this. Let's just get over this money thing. Like, there's enough systems in place. We live in an amazing place that will allow us to do it. Like, let's spend the time. Let's figure this out. Let's be done with this. There's more to life than this money thing. Let's just get over it.
Yeah.
Let's be done with it. It's
Right.
good enough. Everything's taken care of. Put the systems in place. We don't have to worry about it. And now we can really go on to the more valuable things.
The more valuable things. I don't know if that's a good way to put it. As any, by that you mean like the, you know, just those things that people, when they get to the end of their life, they tend to talk about actually matter, like relationships and quality time spent and
Absolutely.
memories. And
Like I love this country and I love capitalism, but we've
cruel
gotten
mistress.
Huh?
She's a cruel mistress.
Cruel mistress. Like, just getting back from Mexico, you know, we do put a lot of emphasis on money, and I'm not going to say that it's good or bad. This is the society that we're in, but it's just one of these things where it causes a lot of people issues, and it doesn't have to. Like, there is a lot of studies that show like there is a correlation to how much money you have and how happy you are up to a certain point, but most of this country lives well below that means. And so, like, let's just get over that. Like, let's just get over that. You can solve this problem. And the more important things are like your health, you know, and your community, and not just worrying about paying the fucking bills. Like, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
There are more valuable things to do than just worry about that.
Yeah.
And, you know, just taking that step back. We're at a point now where I think we can do that. I don't think that necessarily everybody should take that upon themselves. I don't think everybody has the capability of taking it upon themselves, which is what I'm hoping, you know, this job that I'm trying to create, that I have created, will do, is like, hey, here's a little bit of a reprieve from this. Like, you can get your bills paid without having to worry, you know, your whole life away, and just get your head above water.
Yeah.
Reevaluate the other things that are more important, like relationships, health, community.
Yeah. Like, if there was an easy out, it would be awesome to be able to hand that out to people to take to get money easily. I mean,
Well,
easy in the sense that it's easy to pick up and start doing and
yeah.
see returns from.
And that's a great thing to, to clarify. Like, what I am trying to do, this only rewards people that are willing to work hard.
Right.
So this is not like
But that's the ultimate kind of system, right? Like one that you can immediately see the returns of your hard work on. Like shorten that time curve between, because it's easy. I don't know. We could have this discussion in circles a lot, but it's like, it's easy to work hard at something and get a paycheck at just a normal job. It's easy to see money come in quickly. Like it's super easy to and you could even argue it's pretty easy to find a job that pays well above minimum wage, $20, $30, $40 an hour, like, and really feel like you've made it, almost in a way. But then there's like, if anyone knew that there was an option to shorten that curve, that time curve between how quickly they had to start trading their times for dollars, and they could find a system like this, being a broker and having all this system in place to do all this stuff for you. Yeah, a lot of people I would think wouldn't be meant for it, but a lot of people would take that, and that could be their reprieve, like you're talking about, to focus on the important things in life.
Yeah. And to clarify maybe a little bit, or to add a little bit more to what I think the more important thing, like the whole EI approach, that has so much to do. And when I think like what I mean by more important things is the lifestyle design of it. Like in this country, we basically identify with our jobs.
Right.
Like, what are you? What do you do for a living? I do this. Like what, and that is, I don't think, a good thing.
Right.
Having kind of looked at other opportunities and myself just being like, this isn't what my whole life, it's like, I'm not doing this thing for my life. Like, this isn't what I identify.
But it's almost a point of like society. Like that's all we know what to ask people about. Like that's the only thing we can think is interesting about there. I don't know.
Yeah. And so with this, what I mean by the more important is the EI approach. It is so much more of a lifestyle design that incorporates making money.
Yeah.
So like, that's kind of what I mean is like, what is more important to you as far as your lifestyle? And then the EI approach is kind of a handbook, hopefully, to sit down, figure out what you are trying, what lifestyle do you want? What are the important things? Is community more important? Is health more important? Maybe money is the most important thing, and leaving a legacy for your family is the most important thing. And that's great, but just being able to sit down, really figure out what that is, and then actually having an avenue to achieve those goals is what I guess is what I mean by the more important things is don't just stop at working for work's sake. That's how I was raised. That's probably why I'm so passionate about this, is like I was worked on the principle of work is just valuable for its sake. And that's not true. Work is valuable for the things that it will provide for you. Like working for work's sake is just, it's not what I think I think this is where this country is at, and I think we need to grow up past that.